I don't think about it. I sometimes think when I was a little kid and I used to hang out with my grandfather who was in his 90s.
What happens when one of Hollywood's most iconic tough guys is pushed to his breaking point? Not by war, not by villains, but by a film that was supposed to launch him into greatness. In 1970, Clint Eastwood walked onto the set of Two Mules for Sister Sarah, expecting a career-defining moment. Instead, he found chaos, betrayal, and a co-star who challenged everything he stood for. Before Clint Eastwood became the iconic figure synonymous with stoic gunslingers and gritty storytelling, he was simply Clinton Eastwood Jr., a lanky kid shaped by the Great Depression and a transient childhood. Born in 1930 in San Francisco, Eastwood grew up tough out of necessity, working an array of blue-collar jobs: lumberjack, gas station attendant, pool digger, before a twist of fate during his Army service opened a door to Hollywood. He started as an awkward extra, but his rugged look and intense presence eventually earned him a lead role in Rawhide, where he became a breakout TV star. Still, Eastwood longed for more than network television could offer. That longing led him to take a risk on an odd-sounding European Western, A Fistful of Dollars, which catapulted him to global fame and redefined the Western genre with its gritty, morally gray style. The success of the Dollars trilogy solidified Eastwood's on-screen persona. But behind the scenes, he remained frustrated by a lack of creative control. That frustration came to a head in 1970 with the filming of Two Mules for Sister Sarah, a movie Eastwood has since all but erased from his public memory. Despite its commercial viability, Two Mules for Sister Sarah was plagued with behind-the-scenes tension and artistic dissonance. Eastwood, fresh off a string of genre-defining performances, signed onto film expecting a fusion of political intrigue, action, and character-driven storytelling. It had all the right elements on paper: a Western setting, a unique historical backdrop, direction from Don Siegel, who became a frequent Eastwood collaborator, and a powerhouse co-star in Shirley MacLaine. But once filming began, it quickly unraveled into something far messier. The film couldn't settle on a consistent tone, oscillating awkwardly between satire, romance, war drama, and comedy. For Eastwood, who thrived on sparse dialogue, raw emotion, and thematic clarity, the confused script was maddening. He believed in restraint, while MacLaine, fiery, outspoken, and theatrical, pushed for exploration and creative reinterpretation. Their methods clashed on almost every level, and the working dynamic between them grew increasingly strained. While MacLaine saw Eastwood as rigid and overly image-conscious, he viewed her as unpredictable and exhausting. Their off-screen tension infected their on-screen chemistry, undermining what should have been the film's emotional core. The issues went beyond personality clashes. Eastwood felt the film lacked the grounded realism that defined his preferred style. The climactic twist, that MacLaine's character wasn't a nun but a prostitute posing as one, struck him as gimmicky and tonally jarring. Instead of adding depth, it diluted the stakes and undercut the dramatic tension. Even visually, the film lacked the stark aesthetic of his earlier European westerns. For Eastwood, it was a perfect storm of creative compromise, an unfocused narrative, a strained co-star relationship, and production that left him feeling powerless. It reminded him that despite his fame, he still wasn't in control of his own career. He was delivering someone else's lines, trapped inside someone else's vision. This realization became the breaking point. Two Mules for Sister Sarah wasn't just a misfire. It was a catalyst for Eastwood to seize authorship of his work. The very next year, he made his directorial debut with Play Misty for Me, a psychological thriller that couldn't have been more different from the chaotic western that preceded it. From that point on, Eastwood became intentional about every project he took. He went on to direct and star in films that were thematically sharper, morally complex, and unmistakably his own. High Plains Drifter, The Outlawed Josie Wales, Pale Rider, Unforgiven. These weren't just westerns. They were meditations on violence, revenge, and redemption. As a filmmaker, he stripped the genre of its cliches and added emotional weight and philosophical introspection. Beyond westerns, Eastwood tackled a wide range of stories, from romantic dramas like The Bridges of Madison County, to war epics like Flags of Our Fathers, to modern hero tales like American Sniper and Sully. Through them all, he shaped a legacy built on quiet intensity and creative authority. He didn't follow Hollywood trends. He created his own cinematic language. And it all started with the discomfort and disillusionment he felt on the set of Two Mules for Sister Sarah. That film became the symbolic dividing line between Eastwood, the actor for hire, and Eastwood, the auteur. Despite its success at the box office and its place in his filmography, Eastwood has never revisited Two Mules for Sister Sarah. He never includes it in retrospectives, barely mentions in interviews, and has offered no public nostalgia for the experience. It's not that the film was a disaster. It wasn't. It made money. It featured big stars. Some fans even consider it a cult classic. But for Eastwood, it stands as a stark reminder of the version of himself he left behind. The actor who said yes out of obligation, not conviction. The actor who was still being pushed around by the studio system. Watching the film would mean revisiting a time when he felt voiceless and boxed in, when he hadn't yet found the confidence to trust his own creative instincts. So instead, he leaves it untouched. It's not rejection out of bitterness. It's evolution. Two Mules for Sister Sarah became the ghost of career turning point, the final role before Eastwood took control of his destiny as a filmmaker. That's why he doesn't rewatch it, because he doesn't need to. Everything that came after, the masterful direction, the Academy Awards, the towering influence, was built by walking away from that one film and deciding never to be anyone else's pawn again. Clint Eastwood has made dozens of films, from gritty westerns to intimate dramas, and over the decades, he's discussed most of them with open reflection, sometimes with pride, other times with blunt honesty. But there's one film in his career that he never talks about, not because it bombed at the box office or embarrassed him as an actor. In fact, the movie was modestly successful and paired him with major talent. But something about the experience behind the scenes left such a deep mark that Eastwood has all but erased it from his personal history. That film is Two Mules for Sister Sarah, a 1970 Western that, despite its potential, became a turning point for all the wrong reasons. Over 50 years later, Eastwood still refuses to rewatch it. Not out of bitterness, but because it represents a version of himself that he left behind long ago. To understand why this one film casts such a long shadow, you have to start with who Clint Eastwood was before the fame. Long before the iconic squint, the steely silence, and the six-shooter persona, Eastwood was just another struggling face in post-war America. Born Clinton Eastwood Jr. in 1930 San Francisco, he came of age during the Great Depression. His childhood was shaped by instability, economic anxiety, and a constantly moving family. His father, a steel worker, moved the family from town to town across California looking for work. Eastwood learned early on to keep quiet, observe, and endure, qualities that later gave him his unmistakable screen presence. He wasn't raised to perform, he was raised to survive. There was nothing glamorous about his beginnings. After high school, Eastwood didn't head to Los Angeles with a dream. He worked a string of grueling blue-collar jobs. He was a lumberjack, a hay baler, a gas station attendant, and even dug swimming pools to get by. Acting wasn't part of the plan. Then, in 1951, fate intervened. Drafted into the U.S. Army and stationed at Fort Ord, Eastwood was surrounded by actors, aspiring filmmakers, and drama instructors. His tall, rugged frame and quiet demeanor caught attention, and after his discharge, he landed a screen test with Universal Studios. His earliest roles were small, forgettable, often just background cowboys or soldiers, but his look was undeniable. Though his early acting was stiff, his physical presence demanded attention. Hollywood didn't know what to make of him until 1959, when Eastwood landed the role of Rowdy Yates in the TV Western Rawhide. It seemed like another generic role, but Eastwood's intensity began to shine through. Though not the lead, he quickly became the show's magnetic force. His brooding silence, his physical command, and that now famous squint made viewers take notice. Rawhide ran for 8 seasons, and Eastwood became a household name. Still, the role boxed him in. He was tired of being told what to say and how to say it. He craved creative freedom and wanted to play characters that felt more real, more dangerous, more complex. That chance came when he said yes to a strange, low-budget Western being filmed in Spain by an Italian director who barely spoke English. The movie, A Fistful of Dollars, was a gamble. The script was minimal, the production cheap, but the character, an anonymous gunslinger with no allegiance and no mercy, was exactly what Eastwood had been waiting for. The result was cinematic magic. The film spawned a trilogy. For a few dollars more in the good, the bad, and the ugly, these movies changed the Western genre and redefined Eastwood's career. He was no longer just a TV cowboy. He was the face of a new kind of anti-hero, cold, morally ambiguous, and endlessly compelling. By the late 1960s, Eastwood's fame was global. His characters weren't the old-fashioned, clean-cut cowboys from earlier westerns. They were darker, more human. But fame didn't mean freedom. He was still at the mercy of producers and directors. That creative tension would reach a boiling point with Two Mules for Sister Sarah. On paper, the project seemed ideal. The director was Don Siegel, whom Eastwood respected deeply. His co-star was Shirley MacLaine, a bold and acclaimed actress. The setting, Mexico during the French Intervention, gave the film a historical edge. It blended Western action with political tension and comedic overtones. It had the potential to be fresh, unconventional, and even genre-defining. Eastwood signed on. He would play Hogan, a mercenary operating south of the border who rescues a nun from bandits, only to find that she is not what she seems. The plot followed their journey through war-torn Mexico, evading French troops and revolutionaries, with a twist. The nun wasn't a nun at all, but a prostitute disguised as one for protection. It had romance, satire, and suspense. Universal Studios had high hopes. MacLaine brought prestige, and Eastwood brought the audience. But as soon as filming began, cracks appeared. The tone was never quite right. Was it a buddy comedy? A war film? A gritty western? The script bounced between sharp irony and solemn political commentary, without ever choosing a direction. That ambiguity frustrated Eastwood, who believed in stories grounded in emotional clarity and realism. Worse, the chemistry between the leads, essential for the film's success, was strained. Eastwood and MacLaine couldn't have been more different. She was outspoken, energetic, and intellectual. She liked to rehearse, revise, and explore. Eastwood was quiet, instinctual, and minimalistic. He didn't analyze, he inhabited. Their working styles clashed from the beginning. MacLaine often pushed for changes, while Eastwood preferred to stay out of the way and keep moving. Scenes became tense negotiations. Dialogue felt unnatural. Blocking turned into power struggles. Even Don Siegel, usually cool-headed, struggled to manage their conflicting energies. Eastwood, who rarely complained, quietly began to loathe the process. He later called the experience miserable, and for a man known for understatement, that spoke volumes. There was no breakdown or public fallout, just an exhausting, relentless grind that drained his enthusiasm and left him disillusioned. The twist at the heart of the story, the reveal that MacLaine's character wasn't a nun but a prostitute, was supposed to be clever and subversive. Instead, Eastwood found it hollow and forced. It didn't serve the story or deepen the emotional stakes. It felt like a gimmick, and Eastwood hated gimmicks. He saw the reveal not as a bold narrative move, but as a betrayal of the film's tone. It cheapened everything that came before it. Combined with inconsistent cinematography and erratic pacing, the final cut left Eastwood cold. More than anything, Two Mules for Sister Sarah reminded Eastwood of what he didn't want. He didn't want to be just another actor mouthing someone else's words, trapped in projects with no clear vision. He didn't want to spend his career caught in behind-the-scenes tug-of-wars. He wanted to direct. He wanted to tell stories on his own terms, stories that resonated with his instincts and principles. The experience became a line in the sand. After Two Mules, Eastwood stepped behind the camera for the first time with Play Misty for Me, a psychological thriller that showed a completely different side of his creative voice. It wasn't a Western, and it didn't involve dusty deserts or shootouts. It was dark, intimate, and psychological. It was also bold. Eastwood cast himself not as a hero, but as a victim of a dangerously obsessed woman. The tone was precise. The suspense felt earned. The entire project reflected a clarity that Two Mules had sorely lacked. From there, Eastwood's directorial career blossomed. He made High Plains Drifter, a haunting, existential western that dismantled the hero myth. He followed the outlaw Josie Wales, Pale Rider, and the Oscar-winning Unforgiven, each one more mature, more reflective, and more nuanced than the last. These films didn't glorify violence or celebrate simple morality. They interrogated them. His characters were often broken, morally conflicted, or haunted by their pasts. His films had space, silence, tension, and restraint. Everything he felt Two Mules lacked. Eastwood expanded beyond the Western too. He directed war dramas like Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, romances like The Bridges of Madison County, and biographical dramas like Sully and American Sniper. Throughout, the common thread remained control. Eastwood learned from Two Mules that artistic freedom isn't handed to you. It's something you have to claim. Despite the awkwardness of the Two Mules experience, Eastwood never publicly trashed the film. He just stopped acknowledging it. In interviews and retrospectives, when his early work comes up, he'll talk about Ham High, Dirty Harry, even the lesser-known Coogan's Bluff. But when Two Mules for Sister Sarah is mentioned, he changes the subject. He's never rewatched it, never revisited it in a director's commentary, never included it in curated retrospectives of his career. It's as if, to him, the film doesn't exist. And maybe that's the real message. Two Mules for Sister Sarah didn't fail in conventional sense. It made money. It has fans. Some even find its oddball tone charming. But for Eastwood, it symbolizes something deeper. A moment in time when he was still being pushed around, still finding his footing, still saying yes to projects that didn't reflect who he truly was. Watching the film would mean revisiting that version of himself. A version that felt boxed in, misrepresented, and voiceless. In that way, Two Mules was more than a film. It was a warning. A vivid lesson about what happens when you let other people define your voice. And from that moment on, Clint Eastwood made sure that never happened again. He took control. He became a director, a producer, a storyteller. He didn't just make movies. He made his movies. And he never looked back. Years later, when Eastwood was asked about the turning points in his long and storied journey, he rarely brought up Two Mules for Sister Sarah. But those who knew him during that period say the experience left a deeper scar than most people realized. Not because of failure. Eastwood had endured much tougher setbacks in his early years, but because it represented a moment of deep frustration at being trapped in a system that didn't trust his instincts. For a man who had built a persona on confidence, independence, and control, the chaos behind the camera was a painful reminder that star power alone didn't guarantee autonomy. It's no accident that almost immediately after Two Mules, Eastwood founded his own production company, Malpaso Productions. The move wasn't just strategic, it was symbolic. Malpaso Creek, a quiet stream near his home in Carmel, California, became a metaphor for doing things his way, on his terms. With Malpaso, Eastwood didn't just star in movies. He shaped them from the ground up. He chose the scripts, hired the crews, set the pace. He began filming with efficiency, often finishing ahead of schedule and under budget. More importantly, he cultivated an atmosphere of mutual respect and creative trust on set, something he felt had been sorely lacking during Two Mules. As Eastwood's career flourished in the decades that followed, his work matured alongside him. The young man who once wore a poncho and smoked cheroots in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns became a seasoned director unafraid to explore grief, aging, regret, and redemption. In $1 Million Baby, he played a hardened trainer facing emotional collapse. In Gran Torino, he portrayed a bitter, aging veteran learning the meaning of connection. These weren't just characters. They were echoes of Eastwood himself. By then, he had stopped pretending to be invulnerable. He leaned into the quiet pain, the vulnerability beneath the stoicism. Looking back, Two Mules for Sister Sarah serves not as an outlier, but as a crucible. It forced Eastwood to confront the limits of his patience, the importance of compatibility, and the cost of surrendering artistic control. It also exposed the industry's tendency to jam mismatched talents into the same frame and expect magic. The film tried to be many things at once: funny, edgy, sexy, political, and ended up being none of them with conviction. For an actor like Eastwood, who thrives on clarity of purpose, that was unforgivable. Yet, in its failure, the film gave him a gift. It stripped away the illusion that he could rely on others to create the kind of work he believed in. It made him realize that the only way forward was to take the reins himself, not out of ego, but out of necessity. And so, while Two Mules for Sister Sarah gathers dust in the vault of Eastwood's filmography, its influence echoes in every tightly crafted frame he's directed since. That's why he's never looked back, not out of resentment, but out of resolution. The man who once suffered silently on a chaotic set became the architect of his own legacy. And in a way, that quiet refusal to revisit the past speaks louder than any commentary ever could. Some films you celebrate, others you survive. This one he outgrew. Sometimes it's the roles we regret that teach us the most. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes journey into the cracks of Hollywood's golden image, hit that like button and let us know in the comments which Clint Eastwood film changed how you saw him. We got more true stories, hidden conflicts, and career-defining moments from the stars you thought you knew. Because in every legend, there's a moment they almost lost it all. And for Clint Eastwood, this was that moment.